Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Now, when it comes to watches, I'm pretty clued up on watches like Seiko. I know a fair bit about Christopher Ward. I definitely know my thing about AliExpress. But Citizen is one of those brands which I don't know too much about. I do have one or two of the models. I've kind of dabbled in them, but I'm starting to look a little bit more at them. Now, when it comes to this particular Citizen in my hand, how did I go about getting this? It's actually a personal purchase. I had given my granddad my SKX 007. Now, that watch is starting to wear and tear a bit, and he keeps asking me to change the time back every time I go see him. So I thought, let's get him a quartz. And I originally wanted to get a Seiko diver, those solar powered quartz divers. I've done a video on one of those like long time ago. I had a fair few of those. They're like the big bulky, quartz solar divers that Seiko released, the Prospex ones, which is a very decent spec watch. So I came across the Citizen. It was a very good price, and after I bought it, I checked it out. I was very pleasantly surprised at the specification on offer, because in my mind I started to really compare it next to the Seiko watches that I had dealt with of the similar kind of spec or caliber. And yeah, I was very surprised at the level of spec and perhaps quality you get. So this is a totally random video. It was not planned, and I wanted to get this out before I actually give this over to my granddad. But let's take the box off and let's check it out. So it's a standard looking dive watch. In fact, the model number is the BN0100-51E, and I actually bought this off a whim just from the pictures. I didn't really look into the specifications or what it's all about, and I gave it nowhere near the amount of diligence I give it when I'm buying a watch for myself. But after I checked it out, got to doing a bit of reading, and as you do, just trying to familiarize myself with it slightly. And the watch, I think it still is available. It's available to buy from places like Argos and elsewhere on the internet. You can get this around £180, I believe, in Argos, secondhand. I mean, they're about £120, £100, depending on the condition. This one is pretty reasonable. There's no real damage to it. Just very minimal signs of use. So I want to just talk through this watch, and maybe if you haven't seen it, it's worth probably looking at. So for around the 120 150 pound mark, you can get yourself a pretty reasonable quartz diver. But sure, it's not perfect, and the specifications are what we would consider dated about this time. So you've got a mineral glass. You also got an aluminium bezel insert, which I don't really mind. I don't mind those at all. But the bezel rotation is 60 click, but it is a very firm rotation, and it's a little bit more consistent than the Seiko divers I've had, the solar quartz ones I'm talking about. I don't know the model number, but I'll pick up a picture if I see them. So I like the rotation, and obviously it's not going to matter if it's 60 or 120. Very solid build, really good grip on there. And of course, you do have male ending, screw down crown, of course, screw down case back, because it is a 200-meter rated diver. It's got Citizen's eco drive movement in there, which is basically solar quartz, right? And another issue which I noticed straight away was obviously none of the markers are hit by the second hand, but again, it's not going to bother me, nor is going to really bother my granddad, in all honesty. But it's got a lovely large orange hand, which Citizen do on quite a lot of their watches, which does make it stand out. You got the skeletonized hour hand, which is kind of like blacked out, black metallic against this matte background, clean printed dial, very large hour markers. We'll also check the lube and see how good that is. So mentally, when I was looking at this watch, I was comparing to those Seiko divers, and I felt this was built just quite a bit better, because there's a lot more weight to it already, and it feels pretty solid. And the main thing for me that did it was when I looked at the clasp. So it's a heavy duty clasp. You can see the Citizen branding on there. This hang tag I'll get rid of in a moment. The clasp is actually very nice. So if you open the flip, you've got milled internals, as opposed to Seiko's clasps. I mean, all the way up until, what is it, the £500 mark, that they were just that folded or strengthened stamped clasp that you got. But this is fully milled at a price point of just under 200 quid. And then you've also got on the fly adjustment. So check this out. This one really impressed me. So you just squeeze the two, and you kind of, it's not, yeah, there you go, and you pull it out, and then you've got your ratchet style extension, or a wetsuit extension, and then it just clicks back into place. So that is a lot of spec from just a 200 quid Citizen, at retail. Let's go ahead and give you the dimensions on this. As I said, I didn't really check anything out, it just looked good enough in the pictures. So we've got case diameter of around 40 mil, or just about 41 if you do it around the bezel, because the bezel does kind of match the case. Thickness of 11 0.5, but that is because the bezel does slope inwards. So if you try to measure the crystal itself, now we can't get in the center. So around 11.5 mm thick, which is still quite a lot thinner than, you know, the Seiko counterparts. And a lug to lug of, what is it, just under 50 mil at 49 mil. And you do have male end links, so that increases that to, so look, around 54 mil. But I think that should curve around the wrist pretty well. And it's got a very substantial weight. It's not far off 200 grams, and it feels solid. And even the case, it has got some really fine brushing. And you also got this polished highlight which goes around the side, touches the crown guards, and follows the whole watch around, and very fine brushing. So I think these little elements already show it to be just a bit better than the Seiko counterparts that I've been used to, I've had in my hand. But of course, just Seiko just looks a bit chunkier. It just looks a bit more, I'd say, fit for purpose, as they were. But I think in the smaller details and things like the clasp, the practical side, you do get a lot more from the Citizen. So this was not meant to be a long video at all, guys. Just a quick, you know, basically bringing this watch to your attention as it was brought to my attention. But let's check out the lume. Let's see if it is as bright as Seiko lume. Unfortunately, in the lume department, it isn't that great. You can find the handset is a lot brighter, a lot more potent lume than the lume that you'll find on the hour markers. They are slightly duller. You also got a different color pip, but yeah, it's not as bright as I'd hoped. And the Seiko, I'll put up a little picture on screen for you guys. I compared that to my quartz diver that I have at hand, and that's a lot brighter. It'll totally kick Citizen's ass in the lume department, and that is way brighter than the Citizen. But the Seiko is also almost twice as much, if not a little bit more, than what this Citizen diver was. Main difference, what I can gather between, you know, the Seiko divers I'm talking about versus the Citizen diver, granted it's a very cheap diver, maybe I'm not comparing exactly like for like, is that the bezel is 120 click versus the 60 click here, and it's got better lume. But that's the only thing. It's got the Citizen has still good enough movement in there. It's got a very good bezel rotation. It's got this crazy wetsuit extension, a ratchet extension, a much better clasp, much better bracelet for the most part, definitely. All for less than half the price of one of those Seiko divers. So as I said, it was meant to be a very short video, just getting some content out there, guys. So let me know your thoughts on these. I'm sure there's a lot of you guys that do have one of these in your collection. So that's it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.